Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight, and if our pre-planning has gone to plan, it is March, it is Zombie Month, and today on our horror movie podcast, we'll be discussing a remake of a film that we did the original of a couple of years ago now. We did the original Dawn of the Dead way back. It was after Romero passed away. We did the original trilogy. But today we're here to finally come back and talk about Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. So we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into that. I don't know if I said our names actually. I'm Peter, and I'm joined as always by Tim.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh dear. This episode, relatively speaking, should be close to when your newborn child comes into this world, and I think there'll be a relevant scene in this movie that we'll talk about.
Sure.
When we get into the spoilers, but so context and all that. When was the last time you watched this?
Well, actually, like last month, like
What?
it was part of my big 200 horror movies in October, just for the simple reason because I had the Blu-ray for a while and hadn't watched it, so I've been going through all the stuff that I'd bought and like hadn't seen, and like obviously I'd seen it before, but it was so excluding that, it had been, I don't know, at least years, not sure exactly how long, but it had been a while.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this probably in about a decade. Like, I think I'd seen it twice before. I'd probably seen it sort of whenever I saw it the first time, a year or two after it came out, and then probably around the early Blu-ray days, I probably saw it around then, and I hadn't seen it since. And I don't know, like if your opinion's changed at all in the years. I know that I think my opinion on this movie, like, it was never like super positive, I don't think.
Well, I think here's my thing. I mean, we can just get right into it, but like so I mean, I saw this in the theaters, like, it came out in 2004, I believe, and so I mean, I don't know exact month, but yeah, I would have been in high school, or like if it was in summer or late 2004, I would have just graduated. But I remember seeing this with friends and actually being like pretty positive about it. Like, I remember like coming out of the theater and being like, hey, that's pretty cool. Like, they did like some interesting things I haven't really seen before. And I think at the time I had seen, like the original Romero stuff, and I liked it, but like, I wasn't like the seasoned film veteran that I am today. So like, yeah, I wasn't like, as precious maybe about stuff as I am now. But this is a movie that I feel like every time I've watched it since, I like it less and less. And I'm not gonna say it's the worst thing in the world, and I will say that I think it's easily Zack Snyder's best movie, which might not be like a huge compliment.
I mean, I think I agree with that statement, but the bar is the bar is somewhere. Also, but Tim referred to himself as seasoned. I'm going to use that again later. I just want you to know that. Seasoned film vet. Yes,
Hey, I know I got at least 200 movies under my belt, so I could say that for sure. But it's kind of funny because I do feel like there was stuff that when this, I mean, maybe this might be a little unfair to judge it this way, but like there was stuff that was newer and more fresher at the time that this came out, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you watch now that feels very tropey. But I think, to be fair, it's like, all right, well, some of the stuff they weren't really doing that much back then, but and stuff like, yeah, it's hard to watch this now without like having like, the full like Zack Snyderness in your mind. Like, yeah, there's like stuff that just, I don't know, it's hard not to think about when you're watching it.
Yeah, I think when I first saw it, I was kind of in a sort of relatively positive attitude. I was like, I didn't think it was anything compared to the original. Of course, the original.
Sure.
Even when I first saw this, I'd seen the original maybe a couple of times and thought it was like a masterpiece even then. And
Yeah.
this, I was like, okay, this is not as good, but it was a fun enough watch and had some fun gore here or there, some nice moments, whatever. I kind of agree with something you said though, is that every time I've seen it, I've liked it less and less than the previous time, and part of that might be like recognizing some of those early Zack Snyder traits, which have only gotten worse
Right.
since. I think that's a factor. I think some of the other things though is part of it's just like a time period thing. Like I watched this, you know, last night, and watching it now, like the early 2000s-ness of a lot of the things in this movie really stuck out to me. And not that long ago, I was coerced into it, but I did actually see the entire Resident Evil movie franchise, the last couple of which I'd never seen. And it was actually kind of funny to me watching this and recognizing some of the things from those movies that were also in this. I'm thinking mainly the gratuitous slow motion and that would pop up. The movie feels obsessed with being cool, which is kind of something that I would say Zack Snyder has a problem with in general. But every time, like, there was so many times where he would do the same slow motion thing of like the shell leaving the shotgun as just after someone fires it or something like that. There's a lot of that like going on throughout. My general opinion of the movie though is that it's okay still. It's just it's very kind of hollow and vapid. I find the characters, like the main dude, the Best Buy TV salesman, as we find out later, I think he is like annoyingly bland, and like it's weird to say someone's aggressively bland, but he's aggressively bland. Like every time he starts talking about like what they have to do, like he has this really almost condescending sort of like he's trying to do this sort of gruff condescending voice, and it really like every time I was like, and then everyone else is just really unlikable for the most part.
I always forget that there's so many goddamn characters in this movie.
There's tons,
and they're so forgettable. Like it's, you know, the original, it's, you know, very slim cast, but there's
four. There's basically four. The main group,
but they're all like, you know, very memorable. Like even if you haven't seen it in a while, you can like picture them in your heads. I think you had a good word for it, like bland. Like people are just and I guess maybe you could say, well, maybe they were going for like just having regular people or whatever, but it's they're just very forgettable. Like I think the only one I usually remember, well, actually I shouldn't even say remember, but like Ty Burrell sticks out to me because he kind of, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, no one really knew him, then he kind of has gone on to be
I remember
more recognizable. But
I remember Ving Rhames just because I know who he is, not because the character in of itself is anything interesting. And I think part of the problem is that they're so kind of hollow and unlikable. It's just one of these things that the early mid 2000s are really guilty of with a lot of horror movies, is like the characters are all kind of dickheads and not in like a charming way. And you know, we should mention that this is not all Snyder's fault. You know, James Gunn, who I do like, typically did write the script for this movie, and that's, you know, it's worth mentioning. Maybe this is him working out his early kinks as well. But some of the characters, and one of the problems that comes from them being so hollow and just kind of being cannon fodder, where we have to have lots of characters so we can kill tons of characters off, which isn't necessarily a problem. Like, there's tons of slasher movies I love that I just want a body count in. But one of the problems is that there's a couple of times in the movie where it tries to do like, emotional music's playing as someone has to shoot someone they care about or something, and I'm like, either we've just been introduced to the characters or we never cared about them anyway. Or there's a couple that really stick out to me as feeling forced because it's right after someone's introduced. And in the original Dawn of the Dead, like, because there's only like 4 characters, when someone has to either be killed or dies in an event, it feels monumental. It feels like the entire fabric of the movie's changed because one of the 4 pillars of what we've been following the entire movie have just been taken away, and if you feel the emptiness there. And this is like, we just lost 2 characters. Well, here's a van full of more characters to fill out the ranks a bit more, kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
So that stuck out to me a lot in this viewing. It's just we need more characters. Just keep throwing more in the mix. I don't want to be completely super negative though, because I do think there's some nice moments or ideas.
Yeah.
But I do think the obsessive, like, we have to be cool. We have to do the coolest thing possible at every juncture. Is, you know, and the result of that is that it feels like it's rushing through a lot of things. You know, the movie's for some reason determined to have like the origin of the outbreak happen kind of at the start of the movie, but somehow still get to the point where they're held up in a mall within 10 minutes. So it just kind of feels like it rushes through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and then I think like you kind of mentioned it being like hollow earlier, which I think like that's one of the big thing. Part of what the makes the Romero movies so great is just the like kind of social commentary aspect. Like each movie is about something, and you can find these like metaphors and stuff that you can attach to it. And then this, like you said, like there's nothing like deeper or like really emotional or kind of anything you can assign to it. It is like, it is just kind of a early 2000s movie trying really hard to be cool.
and it sticks out a lot as well, because there's a scene where there's a lot of zombies coming towards them all, and they're on the roof, and like one of them says, why are they coming here? And this was a conversation that was in the original. And the answer in the original was like, well, maybe they're coming out maybe it's out of habit, because this is where they knew to go, they spent so much time here. And in this movie, so it says, maybe it's out of habit, or maybe they know we're here. But it's just them raising that same question, because in the original movie, them raising that point and saying maybe it's because they remembered coming here, it was like a it was like a signal of saying, this is what we're doing, this is the theme of the film, and everything else in the film reinforces with that conversation. Here it's just it's like a reference to the original, it's a throwaway reference. And there's a couple of cameos of like people on TV, the actors from the original. Ken Faree pops up, Tom Savini pops up on TV. And of course they had to take the No More Room in Hell, the Dead Will Walk the Earth, and turn it into this big like speech as a like this religious pastor, like this is a punishment for gay marriage and stuff like that. And like I don't know, it was like, okay, it's not that that's like necessarily a bad idea to have that type of character. Or have someone like, I mean, we both love The Mist, and having like a character in that who's super religious, who's like saying, oh, this is all a punishment for our sins and blah blah. There's nothing wrong with that take, because there would be people who react like that. It's more just that there's a line in the original that they wanted to have in, so they had to overly complicate it, because it's a remake, we have to add more to it, so we're just going to add on things, and I don't know, it just that's what it felt like to me.
Oh yeah, totally. And like you can easily just, if you want to have the line, it's fine, but it's probably better to just, I don't know, just make it something like a little more subtle. And but like I do feel like stuff like that, especially in these kind of earlier remakes, like they really go out of their way to try to like, I don't know, like make it feel bigger and more important and stuff, when it's like, no, you're thinking too much about it. Yeah,
it leads to a lack of like tone and atmosphere, or at least one that feels impactful, because in the original there's this kind of eerie like quality, there's this like, we have to kind of take back the mall, because that's one of the other things that I really don't like about the remake, is that in the original the mall feels like a character almost. It feels like you really get to know the place, it feels like it is this haven. Here it just kind of feels like it's where they happen to be. It doesn't really matter all that much. There's a montage in the middle where they're all using stuff in the mall, which did happen in the original, but again here it feels like it's just, I don't know, it's just here.
Yeah. And of course it has to be like more graphic and set to like, a funny ironic song, and like have characters like, having sex and stuff, and it's like it's just too much.
Yeah, it's the edgy 12-year-old version of Dawn of the Dead in a lot of ways. That's actually something else from Zack Snyder, which isn't always a bad thing per se. His use of music in, say, Watchmen is quite good at a couple of scenes, but I did kind of feel it. If I remember correctly, the montage in this is like a piano version of Down with the Sickness. And then there's Johnny Cash over the end credits or the opening credits, whatever it is. But there's a lot of popular music sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes maybe it works, but sometimes it just feels like you're just trying too hard. Like, the Down with the Sickness thing. Like, I mean, it's kind of funny, but like, I don't know, it does kind of take me out of the movie, because now I'm like, oh hey, this is funny that this is like slow what do you call it, like lounge singer version of this song, but I'm no longer really, thinking about like the characters and stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of as a good example of a zombie movie that has good like source music, because I think the zombie genre by its nature, and maybe even post-apocalyptic in general, feels like it doesn't really lend itself to having like a hip track playing. It feels almost contradictory to what the feeling of the movie's supposed to be. And I'm not saying you couldn't do it in an ironic way or something that has a bit more, I don't know, wit to it, but I'm trying to think of a good example, because because obviously Night, Dawn, and Day don't have popular music sort of coming in.
I mean, yeah, I mean the first example I think of is Shaun of the Dead, but I mean obviously that's like comedic.
Yeah, but it's from the scene though. It plays on the radio, so it's not.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just like over the top, as it were.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm thinking about it in the context of this movie and how it again, it just seems to kind of take away from the atmosphere of what the feeling's supposed to be.
Yeah, I can't imagine a movie like a Romero zombie movie doing something like that. Like, if you did it, it would have to be because you're doing maybe something funnier, or maybe trying to do something like hip or sleek or something. But yeah, I feel like it would take away like a lot of dread and stuff that usually kind of comes with the zombie movie.
Yeah. How do you feel about the zombies themselves, the running and all that jazz?
So I mean, that was one of the things I feel like I liked when it first came out, because it was kind of different. It's one of those things where it's like, all right, I don't want to see every movie like this, but it's an interesting idea to, shake something up. Like I do prefer classic night zombies where they're kind of shambling around, to fast zombies, but I'm not against the idea. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things though that I feel like it takes like a little bit away from it, because I feel like, all right, we got a lot of movies after this with fast running zombies, and they all kind of make the same noise. Like it's always like this like like sound whenever they see, which I'm just really over at this point.
Yeah, well,
I don't know, it's fine, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me is just how quickly they turn. Like within like 5 seconds of being bit, they're turned into zombies, and it's so different from the classic Night, Dawn, Day and a lot of zombie stuff. And it's funny that we happen to be recording a review of 28 Days Later, like right after this, because that won the vote for the zombie theme month, and that's what we're going to do. But it's funny because that happens in 28 Days Later as well. Is that it's like a quick like 10 seconds transition before the person turns into a zombie. And it really does feel like this movie took a lot from that film, because 28 Days Later, I'm going to say it was definitely the first with running zombies, but it's definitely the one that kind of brought it to the audience and the mainstream and said, hey, we can do this. And I think Dawn of the Dead remake kind of established that, hey, now other movies are going to use that type of zombie, and it's going to just be, now you've got two choices. Like if you're making a zombie movie, you've got two choices now. You're doing the quick zombie or you're doing the slow zombie. And I don't mind that as a choice. I mean, if anything, it's something that feels different. I honestly I think if I was going to do like a movie called Dawn of the Dead, like I wouldn't set it in the mall. I feel like it's pointless trying to recreate that, and I think this movie kind of proves that it was kind of pointless doing that. Like at least do it somewhere different. Go Dead Rising 2 route, do it in a casino or something like that. Like give them a different kind of like building. Yeah.
I don't know. Like if you're gonna do it in a mall, like I feel like maybe try to have like more fun with it. Like I don't know, maybe utilize the surroundings more, because again, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but yeah, it doesn't really feel like they like kind of like take like are using the environment that much, and to the point where like the first one, like the mall feels so like you said, like a character, like it really sticks out in your mind, and like I can like envision it in my head, like someone like where the escalator is placed and where like the fountain is, and like what the back rooms look like. And then this, it just feels very like bland. Like I watched it a few days ago, and I couldn't even really tell you much about like what the layout was like, or a lot of the rooms that they visit.
Yeah. Plus the whole idea here that like in the original, the mall was this like gold mine that they stumbled into, and it was like, oh my god, this is our mecca. This is like everything we ever need, and that played into the social commentary. But here, like characters run into each other, and they say, "Oh, there's no point in going there. We just came from there. There's no one left. We're going to the mall." And then the camera just comes up over the hill and the mall's there. Like, it doesn't feel like if they actually thought about this, or there was a reason, or maybe it was more of a, I don't know. It felt again so like rushed, where they wanted a character to say, "We're going to the mall," but without any kind of like, "Oh, because we think there'll be supplies," or "Because we think this, because we think that," anything like that. So it's I don't know. It's just like, "Hey, we're at the mall now. Just we're here now. We can just go on with things." Because the original as well takes a bit of time to get to the mall. There's a good like 25 minutes in the original before you get there. Yeah.
They might as well have just had a character said like, "Hey, we should go to a mall," like in that movie.
Yeah, it almost does feel like it should have. In fact, I can't even say we're going to the mall without hearing the song from How I Met Your Mother, like the Robin Sparkles thing.
Yeah.
I'm not even a big fan of that show, but I remember that song. It just there's no reverence in the mall in this movie. It's just kind of the place, and
yeah.
I think that's more a problem with it being a remake than it is about being a movie on its own. If this was a movie on its own that wasn't connected to anything, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem if the characters were more interesting, which they're not. That's another problem separate. But because that's what the original really brought to the table, this one, it just kind of feels like, it's just, that's what they are. No big deal.
Yeah.
Let's just roll with it. Some of the gore's good.
The gore's not bad. Like, you know, some kills are decent. Yeah, did you watch the theatrical version or the unrated version?
Unfortunately, for some reason, I bought this in Blu-ray back in like 2010 because I bought a lot of nonsensical things on Blu-ray in 2010. Unfortunately, it was the unrated director's cut I had, so I had to sit through an almost 2-hour version of the goddamn thing. What version did you watch?
I watched the theatrical.
Son of a bitch.
Although, I mean, I've seen the unrated before. I might have watched the unrated in October. I forget. But because I have the Scream Factory Blu-ray, which has it has a disc for each. And it was funny because I was looking at it and, I was looking at that unrated disc and I was like, I don't even want to go anywhere near any kind of Snyder cut. I don't want get away from me.
That's good. But I haven't even thought of that. You're right. I watched the Snyder cut of Dawn of the Dead. I wish I did have the theatrical option because it's 10 minutes shorter and I could have done with that.
Yeah, and I remember having like this me and my friends used to like I don't know if I want to say debate, but we used to talk about this a lot because I think it was like a big thing with us when like the Lord of the Rings movies came out. But like, sometimes the theatrical version is just a better version. Like these unrated and director's cuts, like, sometimes there's a reason why, they don't want people to put out like 2-hour and 30-minute movies and stuff. Like, I don't know. Sometimes it's nice.
Yeah, it's very case by case. Sometimes it's just like, hey, we've got some deleted scenes we can throw back in so we can resell it as another version. But sometimes it's, no, the original version was compromised and the director actually, wants this version to be out there. And, it varies from time to time. Like, and then there's some that are like kind of like just kind of 50-50. Like, Terminator 2 Special Edition is a solid version of the movie and the extra scenes are interesting and cool to see. But I think the theatrical cut's got better pacing. I'll pick the theatrical cut of Terminator 2 when I've given the choice. Yeah. But the same director with Aliens, I'll always go with the longer one because it has so much good character stuff that really adds to the movie. So, it's very case by case.
Yeah.
But so there's that. So unfortunately, I watched the longer one. For some reason, this is the American Blu-ray, and for whatever weird reason, there's a scene at the start, and I don't know if it's in the theatrical cut, but it's when the main character, played by Sarah Polley, whose name I have no idea what it is, but she's driving away from our neighborhood, and there's a scene where like a topless zombie like stumbles past her to the windshield. I don't know. Is that even in the theatrical cut at all?
I don't remember it. I feel like I've seen it before in the unrated, but I don't think it was on this watch. Yeah,
you'd remember the boobs, surely. Boobs are pretty. Well, for some reason, even on the unrated director's cut in the US, this is not in the UK disc. This is uncensored, but on the US disc, there's like CG blood added to the windshield, so you can't see the boobs, which is really weird because there's boobs later on in the movie. So I'm not so sure why they felt the need to censor the boobs here, but
his zombie boobs are too much.
Apparently, yeah. But hey, so as far as anything else, spoiler free. I will say some of the CG, especially whenever there's an explosion, the CG it looks really bad. I thought.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that. There's some scenes later on where they're sort of like driving through crowds of zombies, and I thought those like exterior shots looked pretty bad. Like they just again, it all felt very CG. And the explosions look really iffy. There's one in particular that really makes me laugh. It's because it feels so fake. It's one of the characters, the head of security dude, CJ, I think his name is. He's on top of a roof, and there's an explosion sort of in the street, and the shot of him reacting, they've put in like some CG flames at the bottom coming up, and he kind of just sort of like as if there's heat, and it looks so fake to me. It looks like really kind of like I can almost see like the student movie that like is trying to like, oh, we can do fire effects, so we'll have the character react, and I don't know, but
it's also very strange where like they have like these two really big explosions, like it seems like just back to back. Like I'm like, all right, I feel like we could have just used the one.
Yeah.
Like it seems weird where it's like, all right, here's our big explosion, and then like, yeah, they drive a little bit more, and then like, all right, let's do another explosion real quick. Like, all right.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same at the opening because I happened to mention that we were doing this to Tara, and she talked about remembering how she liked the opening scene, and what she means by that is the neighborhood where she comes out of the house and like the camera kind of pans around and there's people, you know. But even that, I kind of had some problems with I like some of the actors, like some of the acting of like, the characters who are just on the street like yelling at her and stuff. I felt was a bit off, and then. It has this need to like constantly have like explosions going off in the distance and stuff. Is it like, you know, the entire world fell apart in one night kind of thing?
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of it. Like it's like I don't know if it like how much is edited in there, but you know, it's like it feels like one, you know, just one long take, which is kind of cool, and I like the idea of all the chaos and stuff. But yeah, I mean, in the same way, like I remember that being a really cool scene, like when I first watched it, and yeah, when you watch it now, it does not look as good as I remember it. But
yeah,
I don't know. I still kind of like the idea of it though, and yeah, I do like the like it the idea of like you know, when we're starting and you know it starts right away, and then kind of having like the stuff at our home, you know, I think is like a little interesting. I don't know. It's not perfect, but I think that stuff is okay.
Yeah, it's very watchable though. I think obviously we've talked about all the things we don't like about it and all the stuff that's aged poorly. It is very watchable. I think probably the biggest problem as a movie on its own, forgetting it's a remake, the biggest problem is just how hollow and like vapid and empty the characters are. You know, I don't give a shit about a single character, and that's I think the biggest problem of this movie.
Well, I mean, I guess you can call us the Watchmen because we did watch it.
I'm not sure what prompted that terrible joke, but here it is.
He said it was very watchable, so it's
sure.
Like, well, I guess that makes us the Watchmen then.
Okay. I guess we're going. I guess we're.
I don't know if it's too late to change the name of the podcast to The Watchmen.
I feel like Warner Brothers would probably sue us if we did that, but yeah, okay. Wise idea. I don't know if the upcoming fatherhood is making Tim go loopier than usual, but here we are. So, yeah, yeah.
I would say though, like again though, like yeah, I agree. It is watchable. Like it's not like you know, it's not like, oh my god, like this is gonna be torture putting it on. And again, if you compare it to the rest of Snyder's oeuvre, then yeah, I would say this is easily the most watchable one. Like if I had to go back to any of his stuff, this would definitely be it.
I guess I think all Zack Snyder falls under this, but I'd say it's all style and no substance, and I don't necessarily always like the style. And
sure,
that kind of sums up Zack Snyder's oeuvre for me as well. notably, things get even worse, I think, with his style for me. And then on top of that, of course, he starts adapting characters that I really care about later, which really upsets me. So
Yeah.
But that's Zack Snyder discussions for another day. But yeah. So okay, I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are our Patreon producers for the month. Well, I should say at the time of recording, because by the time this goes out, we may have 10 more Patreon producers. I have no idea. It's the future. But, or we're in the past.
The way we're going, probably.
That's a positive thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
We usually get 5 or 10 new people a day.
It's not that good. Hopefully by March things are looking that spiffy. That'd be great. But you can of course support us over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month, and $1 is a lot. Don't think it isn't, because it is more than we make from like ad plays on YouTube if you watched every single video we put out in a month. But you get bonuses, you get bonus episodes of the back catalogue of bonus streams. They'll be returning sometime in sort of mid-late spring. But there's a whole back catalogue of like 25, 26 of those. You can go check out those. There's voting rights at the $5 tier and early access at the $5 tier. If you can't do any of that though, do not feel bad. You can hit the like button on YouTube. Liking is super important and lets the YouTube algorithm know that we're worth recommending out, and more people will find us. So there's lots of ways to show your support. So thank you very much. That is the end of your public service announcement. We will now continue with your regularly scheduled review podcast. So full spoilers for Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead from henceforth. We kind of mentioned the opening. Of course, it's just, main character's a nurse. I should get her name. Let's have something to call her. Anna. Would you have guessed Anna? Would you have?
No. I would have been like Sarah.
That's the actor's name, so I mean,
Yeah.
that's not that weird. And blind white dude is Michael, apparently. Okay.
Okay.
I would not have told you that. But fair enough. So actually, Mekhi Phifer, who's in this, he's one of the characters they run into very quickly. He is the pregnant wife. What else was he in that we did recently that made me go, oh, he was in that? Well, wasn't that recently, but I Still Know What We Did Last Summer. This is Mekhi Phifer of I Still Know What We Did Last Summer fame, if you can call it that.
The brother of Michelle Pfeiffer, if I'm correct in that.
I'm going to say it's unlikely.
Okay.
I don't think him and Michelle Pfeiffer look a lot alike. Just
All right. Fair enough.
So she goes home. There's a quick, again, all very quick and snappy, but there's a quick sort of scene of her like being comfortable with her husband, but then the kid who she talked to before like comes in and bites him the next morning, and chaos reigns, and she's out driving in the streets. Like I say, very flashy, big shot of the street and all the chaos and explosions in the distance. That's what it is. But very quickly she runs into these other characters. She runs into Ving Rhames first, who helps her at the car, and then they run into Blind Michael and the pregnant woman with her husband and whoever. So they go into the mall, and I think one of the things that this movie does that maybe the original just, I don't want to say glossed over, but just it wasn't like a factor in the original, is the idea that there's like security in the mall. That kind of becomes a big thing early on, where it's kind of a power play where you've got very, like, three of them, like two of them are kind of shitty characters. In fact, the closest thing we have to an arc in the movie really is that the main one, CJ, who's a complete prick, at the end is kind of willing to like be not a prick.
Yeah.
He actually sacrifices himself in a really stupid way, to be honest. I never understood. He at the end of the movie, he's like, oh no, you go and I'll catch up, because he wants to like take on the horde. I'm like, you could just run with. Let's see what you achieved by staying behind. Nothing. Like, you really could have just went with them. I don't know. It's
and like, I don't know. Like, are these characters supposed to be? Because like, I guess a big thing that's like missing from this version is like we don't have the bikers like, in the original, which kind of become the antagonists like, towards the end, and like I don't know if these are kind of supposed to replace them. Like, because these are like the kind of angrier, shittier people that like our good characters have to fight against. But um, yeah, it's kind of strange. Like, I mean, they're here very early on. I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of takes it and turns it into more of like a like because one of the things I love about the original is like they have to sort of think about how to like clean up the mall and get rid of all the zombies. How do we make it safe? And there's a lot of tactical planning that goes into that, and I love that portion of that movie. Here it's more about this power play of like at first the security guards are in charge and they won't let them have weapons and they're kind of awful to them, and then things kind of flip once there's more characters arrive and they end up like getting the upper hand and they lock them in the cell and whatever. So it's a very different mechanic. I won't say that's a bad thing. I actually think that's a good tactic to make it feel different, is to have this kind of power play mentality from the get-go. It's kind of like taking parts of Night into it as well, in a way, by having these characters who are sort of like have the power because they're the ones that have more guns and they have the keys and stuff like that.
It is also a little interesting because I feel like, a lot of zombie movie formulas are, kind of set up, and then a lot of zombie stuff. And then I feel like, the final act will introduce like these bad humans like that. I feel like there's a number of zombie movies that do that. So I guess it is a little interesting to kind of, flip it and have that, more towards the start. But again, it doesn't really feel like, I don't know, they do anything that interesting with it. It is just kind of like, kind of quickly like, hey, here are these assholes, and oh wait, now they're the ones in the cages, and yeah, we're going forward.
Yeah, I mean the most interesting, I think, element of the movie is probably the idea of the guy across the street, right? I always kind of like this idea that there's someone who's also safe in their own place. Like it's, in this case, it's like a gun store. Like there's no gun store in the mall this time, but there's one across the street. And this guy who's living there, like communicates with like cards. There's a lot of like Ving Rhames, who is at first obsessed with getting to his brother. Ends up forming this friendship after he's like convinced his brother's dead and he's really pissed about that. He ends up like forming a bond with this guy Andy who lives across the street, and they're like playing chess but holding up signs with binoculars and stuff. And I thought that friendship and then the attempt to kind of like get food to him because he's running, because this is what I love about zombie movies. I love the mechanical kind of like, how do we survive the problem? How do we solve the problems that come up? So that's like, okay, there's a sea of zombies between us and him, and he's ran out of food. We have to get him food somehow. I love that concept. I don't necessarily love how they tackle it in the movie because they just sort of like, it just so happens that dogs are like immune to zombies. The zombies don't care about dogs, so they can send a dog. I don't really care about that. That feels like just it feels like something they just wrote into the script because they need a solution to this, so they just made up this rule.
It always feels like I don't like it. Like I mean, I love dogs, and I am grateful that like we don't see this dog get ripped apart by zombies, but it also just kind of feels like a cheat. Like, all right, why the hell would they not eat dogs? Like, why would they not be eating every like living thing they can find? Like, it seems kind of weird to me.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird rule to like help the problem they present, rather than the characters inventively coming up with something. Especially since it's like 5 minutes later when like Nicole, the sort of the redhead woman whose dad, like, because they're the second batch of characters that come. So when we get the second batch of characters from the truck, we have an older woman, we have a guy who's like an organ player at a church who's also gay, and we have kind of the asshole Ty Burrell character, his younger girlfriend, and was there anyone else? But anyway, so it's Nicole and her father though, right? And her father's already been bit. And at this point, and I think that's one of the things that frustrates me watching this movie, and it's one of the most frustrating things about zombie movies in general, is that, like, I get that you have to have characters. Okay, they don't know what zombies are. This is a world where there's no zombie movies, and that's fine. I understand why you want that. You don't want them to be cracking zombie jokes, or you want them to take it seriously. So it's just the infected, the whatever. But we have to go through this process of them not knowing A, how to kill them, and B, not knowing how they get infected. And the movie spends quite a bit of time on the wait, it's the bite. The bite does it. And like this idea that you'll turn into a zombie if you get bit. Like, the audience all knows this, right? If you've seen any number of zombie stuff, if it's just pop culture at this point, So it's kind of tedious unless there's some new twist on it or some mechanic or some like emotional like connection to it. It's really frustrating watching this play out. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where we have this thing where they have to choose to kill this guy because he's going to turn. And the daughter, which is conveniently not a long, for him it's conveniently a long time. It's not 10 seconds. I guess
I wasn't sure if there's I forget, did they say why that was?
they never did. I can only assume it's because he didn't get killed as well. Maybe it's only 10 seconds. If you get killed in bit, it's 10 seconds, but if you're just bit and you're still alive, it'll take a long time for you to turn.
I guess that makes sense, yeah.
But so they have to do this thing where she's emotional, she's crying, and the music's ramping up, and it's like, who's going to do it? And I'm like, we literally just met this guy. And
yeah.
And the character Nicole, I'm sorry, is like one of the most annoying characters in this movie. She's so upset about her dad. That's all we ever really get to know about her. And then she like sort of latches on to the young security guard, the one who's kind of good, who kind of turns his back on the other two assholes. But then she gets obsessed with taking care of the dog. And when the dog gets in trouble, when it goes to like get food to Andy, she ends up driving out in the truck and like putting herself in danger to get to it. And then she's just constantly like whimpering and crying for her, her new boyfriend or the dog, or it's very one note and it's very frustrating to like watch. Most of them are one note. That's kind of the problem, is that they're all one note in one way or the other. I mean, did you care when Blandy McBlanderson and Lady Blanderson like eventually kiss? Like, like
no, like, yeah. And the thing that kind of sucks is like I think they're like all like pretty good actors. Like there's
nothing wrong there, I think.
But yeah, they don't really have much to do. Like I think the only people that really stand out are like Ty Burrell and the mustache guys at CJ. Like they stand out because like they're assholes. So usually assholes like kind of tend to maybe have like more one-liners or a bit more personality. But yeah, everyone is just kind of like bland and hey, we're good because we're good, I guess. I don't know.
It's hard to feel anything from a lot of this stuff. Well, I think the big example that I would go to here is that so eventually the pregnant woman like is mysteriously like being hidden from everyone in one of the stores, and Mekhi Phifer, he is like being very secretive, and it turns out that she's actually turned, right? She's been bitten, she's turned, but the baby's still coming, and he's kind of latched on to the idea that he's living just for the arrival of his baby. Again, as a soon-to-be father, I'm sure you love watching this sequence.
Oh yeah.
What if my child's a zombie baby? Ah! But so what ruins this for me, right? So you've got a zombie woman, the baby's born, and then like a power outage happens. There's like an action scene down the where the generators are down the parking lot area, like with some of the guys, right? But then we cut back up to these characters, and it's the older, and I say older, she's like, I mean, she's not that old, but it's like a sort of, 50-year-old, mid-50s woman that's kind of in the team, and she goes to check on them, and she catches, this, like, the baby's a zombie, the woman's a zombie, and she, of course, does what she's supposed to do, which is shoot the woman in the head, because she's a zombie now. And Mekhi Phifer is like, you're gonna kill my family? And he essentially gets into a shootout with this woman. And so this should be a big emotional scene, right? I think we have to spend more time on these characters to actually care about them. But let's just assume we did, right? Forget that problem in the first place. Assuming we did, this scene is completely like all the emotion is ruined because instead of having sort of some like quiet moment where things are happening, the music is going nuts, and we get for some reason like a lot of slow motion as he's like pulling the trigger repeatedly. So he's holding a zombie baby in one arm, and the shot's got him like sort of the gun's like out in the foreground, and he's like shooting this woman, and it feels really over the top and silly in a way that kind of betrays like I think what the scene's really trying to feel. But that's, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I will give him credit with like, I mean, this idea I think is good, and I can't really think of any other movies that try to like tackle this. So I'll at least give him credit for that it's something kind of new and interesting. But yeah, it's when you go and watch it, it's like, I feel like they could have done something like cooler, or like maybe it would have played a lot better if it was just try to be like more subtle and creepy instead of like over the top and actiony, and like it's trying to like kind of throw it in your, like, it almost feels like instead of doing something like that could have been like genuinely creepy, instead they opted for the going the route of like, isn't this so messed up, like look how like messed up it is that the baby's a zombie, like I bet you didn't expect that, like
Yeah.
hey, like ooh.
I think
It's
the
like,
word I think the word edgy applies.
edgy,
Which funny enough,
yeah.
I feel like Zack Snyder's filmography kind of leans into that a lot. Batman v
sure.
Superman is trying to be edgy, quite,
Yeah.
And then of course the scene ends with like them all realizing there's a zombie baby, and it cuts away, and we hear the gunshot, and it's like, okay, all right, whatever. Like, I don't know, the whole scene ends up playing to me as laughably bad rather than like unique or like devastating. I don't feel devastated watching this scene. I see this over the top, the way it's been shot, the way it's like he's shooting the gun, and the slow motions, like, and the bullets are, and the women's like the squibs are going off, and like the whole thing just comes over to me as just excessive and ridiculous and tactless. That's the word. Tactless. It's very tactless.
That makes sense.
So that's that. Is there any other stuff when they're in the mall that's kind of worth talking about?
For some reason this scene always sticks out of my mind, but when like that kind of like bigger zombie is running towards like Sarah Polly, and she kind of like almost like harpoons it, and then kind of has to like like shift her body weight to drag it down. I always thought that was kind of cool.
There's some decent like stabbings and decapitations and shotgun blasts like blowing off someone's head. There's a few examples of that. I mean, they're all fine. I will say I don't love how the movie looks. It's kind of this weird thing where it's not desaturated like some of Snyder's films. It's actually very saturated, but it's going for this kind of grimy thing over the top of it as well, and it kind of it makes everything feel a little bit just almost too saturated, like it's going for like extremes, and I don't know, it comes off a bit weird to me. But I've never been fond of Zack Snyder's shooting style, though. I've never been fond of his visuals. Some people love his stuff. I've never understood it, but that's a taste thing more than anything else. But
I don't think it plays out when you actually like watch it, or at least not for me. Like the way I always kind of thought about it is like, I feel like you might be able to take like single frames from his movie, and you show it as a still image, and you might be able to go like, oh, that's like a really cool like looking image, but when you actually watch it all together, it usually doesn't work for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. I do think the pacing of everything is kind of off kilter. Everything's kind of rushed and snappy in a way that I don't think fits kind of. It feels more like an action movie than a horror movie. Honestly,
sure.
I've given some specific examples of like the slow motion gunshots and stuff feel like an action movie, but just the way it's edited, the way it kind of flows, it feels more like an action movie than it does a horror movie. And that isn't necessarily a bad. If that's what it is, that's what it is. Like if it's an action movie, it's an action movie. But I don't know if the movie's actually trying to be an action movie. Like, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not really sure exactly what it's trying to go for. It kind of seems a little all over the place.
But hey, so eventually it's like, okay, we can't stay here. There's some buses in the downstairs. We can reinforce them, so they put panels on it, and they've got like slots for chainsaws. And it's during this, because they're still planning on saving Andy at this point, but obviously Andy eventually dies, and it is what it is. But they go across and get ammo and stuff.
Yeah, it feels so stupid, like how he dies too, because it's like you're saying, they're having the dog send him food, and they have like this little like, I don't know, I guess kind of like almost like doggy door or thing that they open it up for the dog to come in, and then it's like the zombies just instantly come in through it as well, and it's kind of like, I feel like it seems like so simple. It's like, you guys could have really thought that out better, or like maybe had more precaution in place. Like,
there's some conceptual stuff here. I love the idea of not seeing what happens and just hearing it over the walkie-talkie. Or I
agree with that.
Like, I like the idea of like, not being able to see it. Like shielding that from us, I think, is really smart. It does feel it does all feel a bit stupid though when like a minute later they say, "Oh, we can go through the sewers to get to him," because they go themselves in the sewers, and it's a little bit dangerous. But it's I was like, wait, this couldn't have been the plan in the first place. I don't know. But one of the big things, so I remember I mentioned that CJ at the end like sacrifices himself. He says, "No, go, I'll catch up," because he wants to take on the horde, and then he stays back, gets bit, and then he just blows up the the gas tank to like blow everything up. That's especially stupid when a minute later it was revealed that Michael was already bit, and he even specifically says that he was bit before that. He was bit, when he was saving her like 10 minutes ago, and all I could think was, wait, so when CJ said, "No, you go, I'll stay back, I'll catch up," you couldn't have said, "No, I've already been bit, you go." It kind of makes Michael a complete and utter dick. He's pretending to be all goody two shoes and noble, but he's kind of an asshole here.
Yeah.
He lets CJ kill himself for nothing. He could have done that.
Yeah. No, that's definitely messed up. And then it's funny too, the like when the car flips over, and like the forget like the woman's name, but like the older guy accidentally kills her with a chainsaw just because they're like the car is kind of bouncing around and stuff. It seems like such like a weird, like pointless death.
Yeah, that's the younger girlfriend from Tyra Burrell's character, who also gets zombified himself because he sort of makes a run for it when the bus flips, and they end up having to shoot him too.
Yeah, and then earlier in the movie, he had said to Sarah Polly's character, like, "Hey, if I ever turn into one of those things, you're more than welcome to put a bullet in my head." And then it's exactly what she does.
I don't know if it counts as putting a bullet in your head when the blast just completely eviscerates your entire head. The head doesn't exist anymore. It was more like a shockwave. I'm just.
Well, she shoots his character though.
Oh, she does. Yeah.
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't die in the explosion.
Oh, I'm not correcting you. I'm just. I'm pointing out that it's not like a regular bullet that she shoots him with that hits him in the head. She like blasts his head off with a shotgun. It's like completely gone.
I gotcha. Yeah. Sure.
So I guess I'm just saying it's more over the top than what he said.
True. Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, like I say, some of the CGs are like riding the buses around, and there's a hordes of zombies around them. Looks a bit rough. But the plan is to get to the docks because Ty Burrell owns a boat, because of course he does. I think, again, adding to the tone that I'm just not super into with this movie is the whole like all the snippets of like the camera like throughout the credits.
It's also weird because it feels like it doesn't really feel like a little Easter egg post-credit scene. It's like, oh no, this feels like an important part of the movie, but for some reason you cut it up and you're only showing it like during the credits. And it's kind of it's stupid because like the movie kind of ends like, all right, we made it to this boat, and what'll happen next? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But then it's like instantly, all right, here's what happens.
They're riding off into the sunrise, and it's like hopeful that maybe they can find something, and it's like an ending. And then I feel like all these little snippets that happen where they get to an island and they have to run back to the boat because there's zombies. It's just like, oh no, there's not really an ending here. It's just, it feels less like an ending once these snippets come into it. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like when it was just, because at first I thought it was just a joke that they found Ty Burrell's camera, and it was like, here's some of the stupid things he was doing in the boat. So it's like a little Easter egg. But once you actually get to them getting to an island and they have to run back, it's like, well, okay, so I guess the movie just doesn't feel like it finished now.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if, I'm assuming that I'm thinking about it too much, but I can't help it since we just watched Zombie 2, which is like an unofficial sequel to Dawn of the Dead, that like as I was watching this now, I was like, is this a reference to that? Because I don't know. I'm thinking boats and zombies on an island. I don't know.
I mean, if this is supposed to be a reference to Zombie 2, the fact that there's no shark makes Zack Snyder a coward, quite frankly.
That's true.
But then apparently the zombies in this world don't even pay attention to dogs, so why would the shark even be...
Yeah. You care.
I mean, I could understand the argument with the shark to a point, like the idea being that it's not a mammal, so maybe that's like enough of a difference, but if it's not even pay attention to dogs, then it's not even going to look at a shark. I don't know. Yeah. it's not a painful watch. Do you know what it is? It's a sort of movie that plays like, I mean, not that most of us watch cable anymore because the world's moved on, but it's a sort of movie that plays on the movie channels and you sort of leave it on because it's fine background noise. There's a couple of interesting or exciting moments, but for the most part, it's such a product of its time period that I'm not super in love with the time period as far as like at least zombie movies are concerned. Maybe horror movies in general. I don't know. There's some good stuff from that time, but
yeah, I mean, we did our countdown, and like there's definitely some gems, but I mean, as far as the decades I've been alive, like I do feel like that has been one of the worst ones for horror. I mean, you can make a case for the 90s, I suppose too, but I mean there's some gems I like in the 90s as well.
Yeah, I think you can make a case. I think 80s and 70s tend to be considered the best. I would argue the 2010s might come after those though, to be honest. There was a lot of good stuff in the 2010s.
I think I was actually surprised how many movies I watched when I did my big watch last month, and then like when you go through like our list of top 50 or 100 favorite horror movies, I think you surprisingly do find a lot in those 2010s.
Well, I mean, we both did our top 50 of the decade, and we couldn't even come close to a top 50 for 2000s. Or the 90s for that matter. Like, this is not possible. I mean, maybe eventually we'll see enough that we actually, and it's not just about seeing enough. Obviously we've seen more than 50 horror movies from the decade, but we just didn't like enough to put 50 in a best of list. It's just so you
can do like a top 25 and then like a top like and then like top 20 okay movies or stuff I don't completely hate.
Yeah, top 25, and then like here's some movies that are watchable.
Yeah.
Don't really feel passionate about them or anything, but they exist. Yeah, it's okay. I think I was relieved at the start when you said that you've liked this less every time you've watched it, because I do think it's one that's not. Whereas the original, like, outside of some dodgy blood effects, like, just it's a fine wine because it just everything it's saying is relevant. In fact, you know what? I think a Dawn of the Dead remake just now might actually be more relevant because like malls, because 2004 malls were still just kind of as big in a way. I feel like now in 2020, I mean not this year specifically because of the pandemic, but the idea of the like, malls have kind of been in decline as like a hot spot. Like a lot of like stores and malls closed down. Like if you did this now, you could at least do maybe some commentary about how things have changed. Like half the stores could be boarded up because they've all shut down, and I don't know, like maybe.
I mean, the only problem with that is that there'd be no zombies. I mean, if they're going to the mall because it's what they remember doing, there'd be like what 2-3 zombies.
That was always a theory. It was never for sure. I don't know, or hell, I could see like all the stores in America like funding like a remake to say, look, these characters find safe haven in a mall because everything is there, whereas everywhere else is screwed because they've all been using the internet to shop. This is better. See, malls are important. We have to keep malls around.
I mean, I think what they if there is like some like dead mall out there that like it's just not like has like absolutely nothing going on, like no one's coming to visit it, why not turn it into like a, I don't know, like gigantic like zombie escape room or something. Like
do you know what this do you know what the modern Dawn of the Dead is? It's characters finding refuge in Amazon's warehouse. That's the equivalent now.
Yeah.
It's a giant Amazon warehouse.
Where they not only have to fight the zombies, but the Amazon workers that are still being forced to work.
That was a good joke.
Thank you.
No breaks, even when you're undead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like, it's a very watchable movie. I guess we're at ratings now. It's it's fine, but it's a little bit obnoxious. So actually, what it makes me think of as I was watching it again, talking about how it always wants to be cool, it reminds me kind of the Resident Evil movies, but also maybe more specifically of what I consider a Sony movie to be. Now, that's not to say there's not a couple of good Sony movies, but I'm thinking, you know, like your Bloodshot and your Venom and stuff like that. It feels like
Yeah.
it doesn't actually come from Sony. It's a Universal movie, but it feels like it would fit right at home with that bouquet of movies. Feels like it's that sort of I don't know, aspirations.
I can see that. Yeah.
Anyway, final thoughts on your rating, Tim.
So I think I'm gonna go with even though yeah, it does kind of sound like we're very negative, but I'm still gonna give it like not a horrible score. I think I'll go like a 5.5 because yeah, it's just like, to me it's kind of just right down the middle where it's like again, like, yeah, I do have like maybe some nostalgia for seeing it when I was younger, but you know, it's kind of going more and more away, and what you're left with though is something that I do still think, yeah, like you said, is watchable. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not great, so it's kind of just right down that middle, and I'll just give it like a little smidge up because I still do think, you know, there's some interesting ideas, there's some decent kills, like you know, the characters aren't great, but at least, you know, they're like good actors and stuff, and yeah, it's yeah, it's just kind of right a little bit above that halfway point for me. But yeah, it is a shame because I do think there are some people that do have a pretty genuine like fondness for this movie, but yeah, I don't know, I wish I had it a little bit more, but it's just fine, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. I'm probably gonna go with the straight 5. You know, it is watchable. It's not a terrible movie by any means, but it's also, I don't think, achieves anything either. It's just kind of there. I don't really feel particularly happy about watching it, or happy that I've watched it. I'm not mad that I watched it per se either. I did groan a little bit when I saw the runtime and I looked at it, because I was hoping it was like 90 minutes, right? Because that's the good thing about bad horror movies, is they tend to be 90 minutes,
Yeah.
or less even sometimes. And I looked at the runtime and I went, oh my god, it's an hour 50. No. Why do I have the director's cut?
Yeah.
Why? Like, I almost went and rented the theatrical cut just to save 10 minutes of my time. So.
And like, I do think it does genuinely flow better. Like, yeah, because I didn't feel the runtime, like an hour 40, maybe still a little too long. Like, you probably could get it down to a pretty reasonable 90, but yeah, I definitely didn't feel it as much. But even just an extra 10 minutes, so I can see adding a lot to it.
No, to be fair, like, I'm not saying, obviously the original is actually a long movie as well. The original is over 2 hours, but I'm not saying that a zombie movie can't be that long. It's just that I wasn't excited about watching it, so therefore I wanted it to be as short as possible. But yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. So there you go. That is Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I know it's one that people are probably interested in us doing. Back when we did the original trilogy, we still haven't done the second trilogy. You know, the Land, Survival, and Diary. Yeah, not in that order, but
and then, I mean, if we're gonna do the remakes too, there's the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead, and oh boy,
Day of the Dead.
I mean, yeah,
I never saw Day of the Dead, or it's because there's a sequel to the Day of the Dead remake, right? There's like Day of the Dead 2.
I think there is, yeah.
Yeah.
It was on Netflix at one point, and I don't even remember if I was able to make it through. But that at least this is like an actual movie. Like, that is the definition of garbage. But
yeah,
I guess someday we'll probably get there.
Yeah, I do you know what, the good thing for Tim is that I want to entice him back as quickly as possible after his paternity leave. So I'm going to like sort of like tease him in with good movies. I can't like say we're going to do bad movies first. Like, I have to be like, no, we're going to do some good movies that you like or you want to see, Timmy, to sort of get him back. Once he's comfortable again, then I'm going to spring all the shit on him. Don't worry. Like, well,
We'll start with some Leprechaun movies or something to
get. Sure. We'll start. I mean, to be honest, the one that we might be on for you coming back might actually not be the one you want to watch.
Oh boy.
Because I think we're recording In the Hood 2 before you go on paternity leave. So the one you do when you come back will be the one that I know you don't like.
Yeah.
So
I guess we'll record that for Leprechaun month, and then
what? What? How dare you? No.
The next theme month.
No. No Leprechaun months. You kidding me? We did vampire. We're doing zombie. Next month is werewolf month. If there's another theme month, after later, that we'll see. But no, you may get another 3 month. Now I'm thinking about it, just because when Tim comes back to record, it might be not consistent at first. It might be kind of like a bit here, a bit there as you're getting back in the groove. So I can see is like wanting to bank in advance again a little bit. So I could see maybe there being a 3 month in like June or whatever. Whenever we get to recording June episodes, because right now we have no idea. But here we are. Anyway, if you made it this far in the review, hit us with the word shallow. Hit us with the word shallow. Okay. I'm gonna make Tim pose for the thumbnail. Probably have to kick his cat away. Honestly.
Damien, you want to be in the thumbnail? No? Okay.
Yes. Begone, feline. Yes. All right. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Pause. I think that'll do it. Okay. I feel like Tim's just making up random poses now without even thinking about what they are, which is fine. That makes for a good thumbnail. I'm not complaining. All right, that is the show. That has been Screams After Midnight. We mentioned earlier, of course, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Support us over there. Hit the like button. Also support. Very good. Catch us on Twitter at Screams Midnight for updates and shenanigans. Especially, Tim's on break from recording. He'll still be on the Twitters occasionally, so you can get him on there and annoy him that way. Otherwise, have I got to tell you? What do I usually say at the end of these, other than that?
Stay safe and good night or something.
I definitely do say stay safe. The safety of our audience is definitely something that I've never considered. Take that for what you may. I kid. I want you to all be fine and not dead. Although us having an undead audience might actually be on brand, but that's
Sure. Yeah.
Whatever. But that is the show. That has been us. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. Thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.